My dear friends, Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Jesus has compassion on the crowd. Now, this reading that we have today is two separate bits from Mark's Gospel. In between these two sections, we have the feeding of the 5,000, in which Jesus' compassion is given a very direct and clear effect. The focus for today, however, is not on the physical needs of the crowd, it is on their spiritual needs. Jesus has compassion on the crowd, as he sees them as being like sheep without a shepherd. Now, the role of the shepherd is to protect and provide for the sheep, to lead them to fresh pasture and away from roaming wolves. So the crowd of people are not being fed, and they are not being protected. What is being described here is the spiritual state of the crowd. They are hungry for spiritual knowledge, to understand the meaning of their lives and how their choices fit within the story of Israel, and they are also in need of protection from the forces of evil which prey upon them and exploit them. Which is why, driven by his compassion and in response to the needs of the people, Jesus began teaching them many things. For it is by his teaching that the Good Shepherd provides for his flock. This is the principal means by which spiritual nourishment is provided to the people. They are taught about the story of Israel, taught about their place within that story, taught how to live and behave within that story, taught the 10 Commandments, taught the way of grace. In other words, teaching is the principal pastoral task. Teaching is how we are fed. Teaching is how we are healed. Teaching is how we are redeemed. All Christians are called to love their neighbour. This is the ministry to which we are called and in which we are commissioned by our baptism. We are all to be the salt and light within the world, working to transform it from within as yeast within bread. What the shepherds are called to do specifically, within that overall command to love neighbour, is to teach the truths of faith, for it is the truths of the faith that set us free, that redeem us from the clutches of the world, that enable us to live life in all its fullness. In the Great Commission at the end of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus gives this instruction to the disciples: "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them." That is the fundamental task of the shepherds, to teach the faith. Where sheep are scattered and lost, then it is an indication that the sheep are not being fed, and so they wander off or they starve. And that is the responsibility of the shepherds. It is always the responsibility of the shepherds. The crowd that Jesus sees are a crowd that have been neglected by their shepherds, shepherds that have been distracted by the business of the temple, the needs of negotiating with the Roman occupiers, perhaps even tempted away from the right path by the emoluments and perks that come from being given a comfortable place to sit, with guaranteed praise from the crowd. Jesus stands in the long tradition of the Old Testament prophets, who denounced the religious leaders for failing in their duty to feed the sheep, to teach the people of Israel the truth about the living God. Consider this passage from Hosea chapter 4, for example. "Hear the word of the Lord, O people of Israel. The Lord has brought charges against you, saying, there is no faithfulness, no kindness, no knowledge of God in your land. You make vows and break them. You kill and steal and commit adultery. There is violence everywhere, one murder after another. That is why your land is in mourning, and everyone is wasting away. Even the wild animals, the birds of the sky, and the fish of the sea are disappearing. Don't point your finger at someone else and try to pass the blame. My complaint, you priests, is with you." The world sees immorality and violence, and the environment dies as a consequence and a sign of that faithlessness. and the responsibility for that situation rests upon the priest. There is something here, perhaps, for the leadership of our church to ponder today. The crowd for which Jesus has compassion is hungry and vulnerable, so he began teaching them many things. It is when we learn the truth, when we understand the great truths of the faith, so we understand the ways of the world and the ways of God. We understand our nature as beloved children of God, called to enjoy the peace that the world cannot give. It's when we learn the truth that we are provided for, when we are well fed and safe. This is what it means to share the faith. It's simply one beggar telling another where to find bread. Jesus loves the people. He sees that they are hungry for the truth, for a sense of meaning in a harsh and unforgiving world. So he teaches them many things. May we be fed with that same living word, and so be enabled to live faithfully in our world, sharing the good news of our faith. Until we meet again. Amen.